Thank you so much for clicking on this video and joining us here at Students Online. Before we jump into the message, I want to encourage you, don't just let this be another video that you let roll in the background while you sit on your phone playing games, but instead, sit up, be attentive, listen, because I truly believe that God's got something to tell us through this message today. Thanks for joining us.
All right, and there you go. Hey guys, I want to do a little bit different style lesson today. So we are coming to you live from my office. It's actually not live. It's pre-recorded, but you get the idea. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So I want you to start by taking a look at this sign right here that I just put on the screen. What does it mean? Stop. Yeah, hopefully a lot of you were able to guess that one. I know all of you don't drive, but we should all hopefully recognize a stop sign, right? What about this one? Yield. Most of you know that one too. But what about this one? Or what about this one? See, some signs are easy to understand, right? But others, not so much. Just like in life, some signs are clear about what it is that we need to do next, where we need to go. But sometimes we're left just scratching our heads, wondering where it is that God might be leading us. Sometimes our doubts and questions can leave us feeling lost, wishing that we had a sign. And so the question that I have for you is, can you see the future? See, I can. How? See, I know for a fact that some of you sitting at home watching sarcastically said that yes, you can see the future, right? But let's get real. None of us know exactly what's going to happen. You may have a plan, right? Some of you guys may have a plan of here's what job I want to have, what college I want to go to, where I want to live, all that good stuff. But we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Hey, when is this COVID-19 quarantine going to end? You don't know exactly. Right, I remember being younger and not having a clue what the future held, and I still don't really know exactly what's going to happen next, right? Even those of you that are watching that like to have your life all planned out and know exactly where it is that you want to go next, don't know really what's going to happen. See, unless you've seen into the future, the direction of your life is mostly unknown, and a lot of times that can be scary, right? We don't know what's going to happen next, and sometimes we feel trapped. My wife and I recently did an escape room, right? And an escape room is tons of fun when you plan for it, right? Like it's only fun because we plan on going into this escape room and figuring out all the puzzles and figuring out how to get out. But if I just locked you in a room and said, hey, figure it out, that probably wouldn't be too much fun, right? It can be fun figuring things out when it's a game, but trying to figure stuff out in real life when it's real situations and real consequences can be quite exhausting. So I have a little game for you. It's pinned down in the description below, and it's a little virtual escape room. So see if you can escape it, and then come back to me. See, making decisions can be hard. It can be difficult, right? The game may have been fun, right? But have you ever had a decision that you weren't so sure on, right? It could have been difficult trying to figure out which choice do I click? What do I do to escape this virtual escape room? But have you ever had a real decision that was tough to make? A real decision that you maybe weren't so sure on, a real question, a real doubt? In the Bible, there's tons of characters that we see that had some tough decisions, some tough questions, right? And one character that I want to look at today is Esther. So in the story of Esther, we start by looking at King Xerxes. And King Xerxes was the king of Persia. He wasn't a follower of God or anything. And he actually threw his wife out of the palace for not coming to him when he called her, right? And so one of his advisors, right, gave him the brilliant idea of saying, hey, let's kidnap all the beautiful young women in the area. Let's basically force them to go into this spa treatment for a year and let the best woman, you can go on speed dates with each and every one of them, and the best woman is going to be crowned the new queen. And so in Esther, that's exactly what happens, right? In Esther chapter 2, if I can get to it, in Esther chapter 2, we find out that Esther, who is the nephew, or the niece, excuse me, of Mordecai, but basically his adopted daughter, because he had raised her, gets crowned queen. And so Esther was a Jew, and so was Mordecai, obviously, but they weren't exactly liked in Xerxes' kingdom. So Esther's thrown into this crazy situation. She probably had some questions and some doubts as she's now crowned queen, right? Uh, but things don't exactly get better when you get crowned queen. Like a lot of you probably, you ladies watching, go, heck yeah, I would like to be crowned queen. But if you remember what Xerxes did to his first wife, he's not exactly the best and most loving husband, right? And so things get even worse in Esther chapter 3, and we see that a plot arises to kill all of the Jews. Why? Well, let's just read. Esther chapter 3, verse 1. After these things, King Ahasuerus, that is King Xerxes, promoted Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, and advanced him and set his throne above all the officials who were with him. And all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage. Remember, Mordecai is Esther's adopted father, right? Her uncle. Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" And when they spoke to him day after day, he would not listen to them. They told Haman in order to see whether Mordecai's words would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage, he was filled with fury. But he disdained to lay hands on just Mordecai. So as they had been known to him, the people of Mordecai, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom of Xerxes, right? And so things get worse. A plot arises to kill all of the Jews because Xerxes' nobleman Haman had a grudge against Mordecai, Esther's uncle. And so Haman basically tricks Xerxes into signing into law a decree ordering that all the Jews would be killed on a very certain date. And in Esther chapter 4, verse 6, we read this. Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square in the city in the front of the king's gates, and Mordecai told him all that had happened to him and the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasuries for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the written decree issued in Susa for their destruction, that he might show it to Esther and explain it to her and command her to go to the king to beg his favor and plead with him on behalf of her people. So Esther basically talks to Mordecai talks to one of Esther's servants, says, hey, I need you to go before the king, your husband, and beg for the Jews not to be killed. Lest we remember that Esther is also Jewish, right? And so she's at first hesitant. She doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to go because, she says, hey, you don't just walk up to the king, right? You can't just walk up to the king or he'll kick you out of the palace, right? Or worse. Right, but as Esther's uncle Mordecai says, look, you think you're going to be spared? You think things are going to be okay for you just because you're the queen? Look, God is going to provide for the Jews. He's gonna cover us. But this is your chance, basically. And so she says, I can't. He'll kill me. He might hurt me. He might do something to me. So talk about this for a minute. What did Mordecai ask Esther to do? Why would she be so hesitant to do what he asked? And if you were in Esther's position, what would you have done? And finally, what did she do? Now, I want you to save that question until after we read this scripture right here. Verse 12, and they told Mordecai what Esther had said. Then Mordecai told him the reply to Esther. Do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf. Don't eat, don't drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. Esther made a difficult choice in a hard time, right? And through that choice, she was able to save the lives of God's people. So she went before King Xerxes, which was against the law. You don't go to the king unless he calls for you. But she begged for forgiveness and said, hey, I need you to spare the Jewish people. I myself am Jewish. I need you to save them, please. And the king did so. And so she, through a difficult choice, right, made the tough choice to do what she needed to do, what God had led her to do. And see, in all of this, we don't see Esther go to God, right? We don't see her go to God in prayer. Maybe she did, but we don't see it written. But what we do see is her seeking the advice of a godly person through her uncle Mordecai. Now, Esther might have prayed to find out what to do, right? But the only thing we know for sure is that she went to Mordecai, who was a godly person, for advice. And we see another godly person, the prophet Elijah, in Kings, 1 Kings, chapter 19. Read with me. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. Then he was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went another day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he asked that he might die, saying, It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my father. So a little bit of context, we pick up in chapter 19 of 1 Kings, and Elijah has just done a miracle to show the power of God, right? And he is immediately threatened by the people that do not like the miracle that he just showed off God's power. And so he gets scared, right? And he runs away, and he basically tries to go and hide and says, God, it'd be better if you just killed me now. But God had something planned for him, and we read on in verse 5, and it says, And he laid down and slept under a broom tree, and behold, an angel touched him and said, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came a second time and touched him and said, Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. And he arose and ate and drank, and he went into the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. There he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said, What are you doing here, Elijah? He said, I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant. They've thrown down your altars. They've killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left. And so God tells Elijah, hey, you need to go over here. We need to have a chat, right? We need to have a talk. And Elijah says, look, I've done everything for you. I've been your prophet, right? Like I've told people your word, but they're rejecting your word. They're killing your prophets, and I'm a prophet, right? And I'm the only one left. I'm not so sure I can go on, but we see God shows up in a big way. In verse 11, he says, And he said, Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, What are you doing here, Elijah? And he said again, I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant. They've thrown down your altars. They've killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left. They seek my life to take it away. And the Lord said to him, Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael the king over Syria. And Jehu the son of Nimshi you shall anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah you shall anoint to be the prophet in your place. And the one who escapes the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death, and the one who escapes the sword of Jehu shall Elisha put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So God shows up in a big way, right? There's earthquakes, there's fires, but God's not there. He's in the quiet whisper. So Elisha gets to experience God in a big way. And there's some strange kind of details of, hey, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go anoint a new king. I need you to go back and get a new prophet, right? You're gonna have your replacement here pretty soon. God issues some weird commandments, and they seem like strange details, right? How can I go anoint a new king if they all want to kill me right now? I can't go back if you didn't hear me. They're killing prophets, and I'm a prophet, right? God was telling Elisha, though, as we see, God was telling Elijah to get a support system, right? That even though God had confronted Elijah and comforted Elijah directly, God knew that Elijah needed other godly people to help him carry on. That's why he said, hey, go establish this new king. Go establish this new king. This prophet's going to be your successor. You need some people around you that can help you in the middle of this confusing, fearful time. And so when we're experiencing fear, when we're experiencing questions, doubts, it's easy to question what it is that we're supposed to do or why it is that God hasn't made the path clear, right? We aren't promised that God is going to split the sky open and tell us what it is that we need to do, where it is that we need to go. But we can see through these stories that we need the help of godly people to help us figure stuff out sometimes. So how do we make decisions when we're not sure what God wants us to do next? We need to get a support system. Why? Because godly people can help us with our questions. There's an old show that a lot of you Gen Zers probably haven't heard of, right? But the old show was called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? And it's basically a game show where you have to know different little bits of knowledge, and as you know these bits of knowledge, you get progressively more money until when you get to the final question, you can earn $1 million based off of this question. And there were 3 ways that you could get help as you go through these trivia questions. And there were 3 different options, one of which was called 50-50, right? It would take out of 4 choices, it would take 2 of them away, so you have a 50-50 chance to either get it right or wrong. The other one was ask the audience, right? Where you could ask the audience, hey, I don't know what the answer is. Is it A, B, C, or D? And they would tell you what they think it is. But probably the most useful one was phone a friend. And it was the most useful one, right? Because you could phone a friend who would maybe be a little bit more knowledgeable on a topic that maybe you didn't know so much. So I'd like to think that if any of you guys got on that show and you say, oh, I don't really know something about music, maybe I'll call Greg. He's a worship leader. He might know a thing or two about music. Or, oh, I don't know anything about history. I'm going to call my friend Jeff because he's a big history buff, right? And so maybe what you need is you need to phone a friend when you've got some questions. Maybe you need to phone a friend when you need a cheerleader. Right? What do I mean by that? Someone who's going to encourage you through a tough time. Maybe you need to phone a friend when you need a counselor, right? Someone to give you some godly advice on how it is that you move forward. You need to phone a friend and get a mentor or a coach, an older, wiser person who makes you better, who pushes you to make progress towards your goals, right? And maybe you need to phone a friend and you need a pastor. And that could be like a pastor, or maybe it's just someone who is godly, who's going to help guide you and help you on your faith journey towards knowing God on a deeper level. Maybe you need to phone a friend and find a confidant, right? A trusted someone who can help you with your deepest secrets, right? Now, I'm not saying that the person that you're going to pick, right, is necessarily going to always have the right choice or always have the best advice. That's why it's important to pick a godly person, right? Someone who's going to help you on your goal of knowing God better. Right? We're all just people. We're going to make mistakes. We're just trying to make our way through life in the best way possible as we're trying to reach towards this goal of knowing God more and helping others know God more. But what they say, right? 2 heads are better than 1. Godly people can help you with your questions. We've covered a lot throughout this series, right? We learned that doubts and questions are normal, that you're not alone in them, and that it's okay to have doubts and questions. We learned that God doesn't shame us for our questions. But in fact, he actually gives us the evidence that we need to believe. We learned that our questions don't necessarily always get answered, but God is with us in the midst of those questions, and we can trust that he's bigger than any unanswered questions that we might have. But as we close out this series, I hope that you feel confident about your doubts, right? To say that my doubts and my questions are okay, that I can seek out the help of a godly person to help me with those questions. I hope you feel safe voicing those questions here at Students at Calvary. I want to close out this series by saying this. If you've got a question, if you've got a doubt, if you've got a situation that maybe you're unsure of how to handle or what to do next, man, I hope you feel comfortable. You can send us a question either on Instagram or to the email that I'll have below in the description. I'll also pop it up right now. Man, just send the title in that email. Just say, I have a question, and we'll seek the answer together. Now, I can't guarantee that we'll find the answer, right? Our questions don't always get answers, but we can always lean back and trust that my God is bigger than any questions. So, will I have the answers to all your questions? I doubt it. But God is bigger than our biggest questions. We'll see you next time.